Hi, my name's James and welcome to something different. Today isn't an episode of my regular show R&R, where I react to and review some of the latest and greatest music videos. Today, I'll be going over my top 3 of 2023. But I've decided to split this up into 2 separate categories. First category is going to be new to me. These are releases that weren't released in 2023, but I found this year. And the second category are new releases. And as a side note, these are going to be in alphabetical order. First up, Blessed Are by Joan Baez. This is an album that I really just stumbled upon whilst browsing through one of my local record stores. Every time I'm in a record store, I try to pick something up, even if it is, just from the dollar bin, and really just stumbled across this one. I'd been a little bit familiar with Joan Baez. I'd learnt about her whilst watching through one of the Bob Dylan documentaries and learnt about their relationship, but I'd never really delved too deeply into her discography. Anyway, whilst rummaging through some record crates, I found this one. And at first I thought, ooh, that's an interesting cover. I like the artwork on it. And then I flipped it over and saw a few familiar songs on there. And for a steal of $12, I believe it was, it's actually just there. No, $10. I thought, why not? Let's salvage this one from the secondhand crates and take it home and give it a listen. And by my surprise, I found some really interesting songs on there. My top track for this one is definitely The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. It's just a folk classic at this point, and Joan Baez's voice really carries the story in a few interesting places. All right, moving on to Hosono House by Harumi Hosono. You know when you're browsing YouTube's homepage and those sort of longer independent video essays, documentaries pop up and you're like, oh, I don't quite have time for that at the moment. And then, every few days they keep popping back up. That's how I found this one. There was one of these video essays, documentaries that kept popping up, I guess just covering a brief history of modern Japanese music, framed in a way of how to introduce people to Japanese music. I can't remember the channel that featured the video. I'll have to try and find that in the edit and I'll pop it around somewhere. But that's how I found this one. And it was really interesting to learn about Hosono and his impact that he's had on modern Japanese music and how his fusion of Western influences into Japanese music at the time really seems to be quite the forerunner for a lot of modern Japanese music that preceded it. Back to Hosono House, it really is quite an interesting mixture of different songs, and you can definitely hear those Western influences coming through, most definitely from the Beatles. The one track that stood out to me in this one was definitely Choo Choo Gata Gata. It's one which it definitely has some of that sort of silly feeling to it. I haven't actually gone through and checked out the translated lyrics to see what it's about, but just the sort of the pacing of the song, and it's got these interesting moments of sort of like soulfulness, but a lot of playfulness in it as well, which I really enjoyed. And last for the new to me category is Venus Theory. No particular release, just in general, I really enjoy the atmospheric music that he puts out, as well as his videos that he puts out on his channel as well. I'm really enjoying his video essays on sort of creative practice and sort of mental health whilst in the music industry. It's something that isn't talked about quite a lot, and I like his approach to it, where there's a lot of sincerity, but there's also some comedy to sort of back it up, and so it's not as dark and gloomy as it definitely could be. But I am really enjoying his music as well. it's something that I can just put on for a long drive and sort of be with my thoughts for a little while, whilst the songs are sort of just in the background and little interesting moments kind of can tick inspiration here and there. All right, now moving on to new releases for 2023. First up, Cracker Island by Gorillaz. This is an album which I've just had on repeat since its release. There's just so many great songs on there. It was really hard to pick a top track for this one. And the track that I picked is Oil featuring Stevie Nicks. It's such a musically simple song. Even lyrically, it's quite simple as well, but it's just the way that the song is built dynamically and the textures that are being used, all the different sounds, sound great and fit so well in the mix. And when you break it down, it really, really is such a simple song that has just been enhanced and built in such a way that makes an impact. Next up is The Gleaners by Low. Now, if you don't know who Low are, they are a band from Sydney, Australia. I guess you could categorize them as metal or one of the many subgenres of metal. Low are definitely one of the best bands just going at the moment from Australia. They're able to not only produce really interesting concepts within their songs. If you go back and listen to their previous album, Vestigial, there is some very, very interesting commentary on the impact that us humans have on nature. And it's done in such a way where the lyrical content is so poetic. But if you delve a little bit deeper and read between the lines, you can start deciphering it. But then just the music itself, it feels so visceral and raw, and it really just hits you in the face. And then if you go that next step further and able to see them live, which I have once, it really is an interesting show. You know, it's super simple. There's not a lot of fancy things happening visually wise, but the performance that all the guys are able to bring, particularly the vocalist with his sort of body contortionist moves that he does, it is really encapsulating. Top track for me for this one is definitely Salting the Earth. It just comes in, punches you in the face with that guitar riff, and is really able to keep you coming back for more. I believe this one was released as a single, and first time I heard it, it just went on repeat, and I think I listened to it about 10 times. So yeah, great album. Again, some really interesting commentary there within the lyrics of the events of the past 3 years or so. So if you really like some raw, heavy music, go check out Low. Last but not least, Volcano by Jungle. This one came at a really interesting time for me. I believe it was just a suggestion from my Spotify. It just sort of popped up and said, hey, we think you might like this album. Chucked it on, and I think it was just one of those combinations of a perfect day meeting a perfect soundtrack. It was a nice, bright spring day just after lunchtime, chucked it on, driving around in the car, and it just fit the mood so well. It's also an album which really took me by surprise because of its track length. I'm usually not a big fan of really long albums. You know, a perfect album for me is 9 or 10 songs, where I think this goes to 14, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, 14. But it doesn't feel like 14 songs, and I think that was a really big thing for me, is the pacing of the songs and the way that they move from track to track throughout the album. There's also some really great feature artists throughout the album as well that offer different vocal styles, different performances, which also just adds a little bit extra difference between each of the songs as well. And I think without those feature artists throughout some of the songs, this album would fall apart quite quickly. My top track for this one is one of the songs that doesn't have a featured artist, but does have an absolute earworm of a guitar lick, and that is Dominoes. But this one, it really is that guitar lick that opens the song, and it is super impressive the way that they use it, and it doesn't get super annoying and boring. All right, that's it for me in this one. Be sure to let me know what are your guys' top 3 of 2023. But if you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to the channel and check out some of these other videos appearing before me. You'll catch me in the next one.